क्या बोल रहे हो गया मेरा, वही डाल दिया मैंने और खत्म किया उसको, अभी चलेगा। साइन नहीं है, मैं अपना डिस्प्ले चेंज करूंगी तो मैं कब करूंगी? बैठ के देखती हूँ। मैडम 6 मिनट के लिए क्या वीडियो रखूं क्या? आप पोस्ट हो ना, तो यहाँ से बाकी सबको पोस्ट बना देना आप फिर। नहीं तो Good morning, everyone. I am Yukta, your host for today. Let's start with the 87th virtual webinar of Sadgun Sang Meet. There is a small change with the speaker and his topic. So now our speaker is Mr. Yogesh Chandekar and his topic is T4S for CGD, followed by question and answer session. Let's quickly go through the agenda. Virtual inauguration by Dr. Sundar Kataria, invoking the blessings of deity, introduction of the speaker, presentation by Mr. Yogesh Chandekar, question and answer session, and finally we close the session. Sadgun Sang conceived and led by Dr. Sundar Kataria, driven with a mission to elevate the quality, safety, and environmental awareness level of industry. Sadgun Sang is a series of educative, informative events illuminate professionals on possible solutions to current industry and economy. A brief introduction about Dr. Sundar Kataria. He is Chairman and Managing Director at International Certification Services Private Limited. He has done his mechanical engineer at AMIE and honorary doctorate at business management. He started his career in building India's first nuclear power plant at Rawat Bhata, Kota, Rajasthan. He contributed in developing India's first oil and gas field at Bombay High since its inception. He was head of industry and offshore development with DNV for 2 decades. He is founder of first Indian conformity assessment and inspection body known as International Certification Services Private Limited, which is a provider of total quality solution under single umbrella with wide spectrum of services. He has achieved Lifetime Achievement Award of NACE Corcon and several national and international awards. I now request Dr. Sundar Kataria to virtually inaugurate today's session.
शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणं आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
Please join us for the recitation of Gayatri Mantra. A brief introduction about our keynote speaker, Mr. Yogesh Chandekar. He is General Manager at Certification from International Certification Services Private Limited. His academic qualification includes he is BE in Mechanical, Diploma in Business Management, Advanced Diploma in Industrial Safety. His area of specialization is Management System Certification, Third-Party Inspections, Plant Safety Audits. Please welcome Mr. Yogesh Chandekar, sir. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Let me share my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning. There is a small, due to some unavoidable circumstances, the today's topic and the speaker is changed, and today I am taking you through the one of the PNGRB notifications regarding the city gas distribution network. One notification, PNGRB has one notification, that is GSR 612E. So this presentation is basically to make you aware about the presentation PNGRB requirements for the city gas distribution network. So the notification called T4S, that is the technical standard and specifications, including safety standards of city gas or local gas distribution network. I am not going much in detail the words like technical standards and specification and safety standards. I will just take you through the requirements in general. I will not go much in detail about the standards and specification requirements. I will take you through the requirements as a general citizen, what we should know, or this will also help the inspectors who are inspecting the city gas distribution network, like the laying of pipelines and the equipments and the inspection of this. So basically, this city gas distribution network is nothing but the supply of the natural gas to the industrial customers, to domestic customers, and to the commercial, like those who are living in the metros, like Mumbai and around area. One entity called Mahanagar Gas Limited. So they have their network, and most of us get the natural gas through the pipeline. So earlier the cylinders, gas cylinders were there, but now they are replaced with the piped natural gas. So this network is nothing but the distribution of the natural gas to the end users. The end users may be the industrial customers. A few of the industries, they require the natural gas. Then the commercial, like the hotels, then the hospitals, and the domestic or residents who are the end user for this entity, who own the natural gas distribution network. So basically, this is restricted to a particular geographical area or the city, and the pipelines are laid for transporting the natural gas to the end users. So basically, there are three networks that we will see, but the natural gas is transported from the steel pipe, then the MDP or LDP pipe, and then the copper and GI pipe. So this is what the distribution is. I will once we start going to the requirements, you will come to know about this. This notification came in 2008. So the basis for this is also the forming the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, who is the regulatory body for the oil and gas industry, and they have this notification called GSR 612E. So that came in 2008. So it is also called as the PNGRB Regulation 2008. So this is about for the natural gas distribution within a city or in a local area. So quickly, few of the important definitions. City gas distribution. This means the interconnection network of a gas pipeline and the associated equipments used for transporting natural gas, bulk at high pressure, mains to medium pressure, and ultimately to the service pipes supplying natural gas to the domestic, industrial, or commercial premises. So this is called the city gas distribution. It is the area of the network could be restricted to one of the cities or the outskirts of that city. Then there are three networks in distribution based on the pressure, the pipeline pressure. First is the primary network. It operates the pressure from 7 bar to 49 bar. So basically, this primary network is of the steel pipeline network. Secondary network is in between the 7 bar to 100 millibar. Basically, this network is of the MDP pipeline. And the third is tertiary network. This is the last part of that network. That is, the pressure is less than 100 millibar. So the the GAIL pipelines, which are carrying the gas, they are transporting gas from one location to another. They have cross-country pipelines, and the tapping is taken. The pipeline is laid from the GAIL tap-off point. Normally, it is called tap-off, and then it comes to the city gas station, and then after it is distributed. That gas is distributed in the network with these three pressures, and with the help of this three type of pipelines. Then this notification is applicable right from the design part of network, then design, then selecting the materials, then fabricating, laying the pipelines, then operation and maintenance of that pipeline, corrosion control, and the anything related to the gas distribution within a city or network. Everything is covered in this notification. The standard requirements or the specifications, those are referred in this notification. So the entity who is developing the natural gas distribution network, they have to follow the requirements of this PNGRB notification. So this regulation covers the design, material selection, then fabrication, installation, inspection and testing, commissioning, operation and maintenance, and it also referred the abandonment of the city gas distribution network. Like if you design a network for maybe for 25 years or 30 years, then once the design life is over, then the abandonment of that network, that is also covered in this notification. So these requirements shall apply to all pipelines, distribution networks, the city gas distribution networks all over the India. You earlier it was for the major cities only, metros and few of the major maybe state capitals, but now around 600 networks are coming up. Around 200 plus networks are already operating, and these the central government is planning to have around 600 city gas distribution networks within India. So this network, right from design till operation, maintenance, and abandonment, so these requirements are applicable to them, and it also covers the consumer meters. So since this pipeline network, the gas is supplied through pipeline, and the consumption is measured by having this consumer meter, and the flow rate measured, and the consumption of the consumer consumption is monitored, and accordingly the billing takes place. So this is the requirements of this meter. Then actually end user, like the shell and the pipelines related to the burner, and everything is covered in this, right from the city gas distribution network till the end user. The intent is basically why this notification came. Earlier, before the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, as a regulatory board, so everybody, prior to that also, some networks were there, but they were following the standards as per, there are not the standardized requirements or the standardized notification or the specifications. Everybody is following different types of network specification or standards. There was no uniformity in laying and operating and maintaining those city gas distribution networks. So the intent of this notification is to have the uniformity in the right from the design till the operation and maintenance. Uniformity for all the networks within the India, and this network is also applicable, or they are also applied or required to follow by the already existing networks. New, definitely they have to follow, but already existing networks, they also have to follow these requirements. And if they have built or designed or they are operating with some other standards, then they will have to get the audit done, and gaps need to be identified, and they should also have the mitigation plan for actually implementing the notification requirements. So this notification requirement is applicable for already existing networks as well as upcoming new network after 2008. Now coming to the standards, this T4S standard, it is covered, there are covered in schedules. So there are schedules like schedule 1A, 1B till 1G. Schedule 1A talks about the material and requirement. So material and requirement for laying the pipelines and the equipments required for the distribution of the gas. So these requirements are covered in the schedule 1A. Schedule 1B talks about the welding. Of course, this welding is required for the steel gas pipeline network, steel pipeline network. But the welding requirements, then acceptance criteria, and the inspection regarding the welding. So this is covered in the schedule 1B. Then the schedule 1C, it covers the piping system components and fabrication. So what are the components required? So it may be for the measuring or monitoring or reducing the pressure. It may also required for the distribution purpose. So all these piping system components and their fabrication. So that is covered in the schedule 1C. Schedule 1D talks about the design of the network, then actually installation, actually building that network, and the inspection and testing of that network. So these requirements are covered in the schedule 1D. Operation maintenance of that pipeline, including the procedures. Some of the mandatory procedures are required. And again, these procedures for operation and maintenance and their implementation. Actually, implementing those procedures are the actual operational maintenance as per that procedure. So that is covered on the schedule 1E. Then the corrosion control. The steel pipeline requires the corrosion control for maintaining the steel pipelines, to improve or to maintain the life of the steel pipeline. The corrosion protection is required. So that corrosion protection and their control, that is covered in the schedule 1F. And some of the miscellaneous requirements are also covered in schedule 1G. So this notification covers the schedules, the requirements under these schedules, and the respective requirements are given in the each schedule. So as under this notification, some default and consequences are also mentioned. So whatever the pipeline is laid or the net, city gas distribution net, so that should ensure the compliance of this provision to these requirements. And the board, that is the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, they will monitor the compliance by conducting the audits. So the PNGRB, they directly can conduct the audit to verify the compliance to the standards, or they can also get it done from the accredited third-party bodies. So PNGRB has approved some of the inspection bodies for this particular PNGRB notification, and they also identified the time required, audit time, and the competency of the auditors. So they can also get this T4S audit done from the third-party impaneled agencies. So those are approved by the PNGRB. And in case of any deviation or shortfall is observed during this audit or during the T4S audits may be conducted by PNGRB or maybe on the behalf of PNGRB by the third party. So, or some of the critical activities they have for compliance to those requirements, some time frame is also given. So if you are not completing those activities in time, then the entity shall be liable to face the consequences. So some of the requirements, some critical operations or activities are mentioned, and if they are not completed in time or some deviation observed during the audit, then the entity shall be liable to face the consequences, and those consequences are given in the PNGRB notification. Though the standard specifications and the standards are referred in this, so along with following those requirements, the entity should also follow the other statutory and regulatory requirements which are there because of their operation and maintenance activities. So each network entity, they should have the compliance requirements, statutory rules and the regulations and act applicable to them, and they should comply to those requirements. And these also standards are implemented to ensure uniform application of the design and guide the selection and application of the materials. And if any dispute arises, maybe within the interpretation of these standard requirements or during the audit, maybe the site conditions, if any dispute is arise with this interpretation of any provision, this requirement, then decision is with the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board. So the dispute will be taken up with the PNGRB, and the decision given by the that PNGRB, that board, that is shall be treated as final. So before actually going to the scheduled requirements, these are the some of the critical activities. So these critical activities and the time period for the implementation given in this. First is the pressure reduction skid with a minimum of 50% redundancy. Since this gas supply is continuously required, you cannot have the disturbances in gas supply, because it is continuously supplying the gas, and the end users need those maybe 24/7. So for continuous supply of this gas, the redundancy is required. So entity should have at city gas station the pressure reduction skill. They should have at least 2 pressure reduction skids and the associated facilities for minimum 2, and they should have it within 1 year. Earlier, for networks, there could be only 1 pressure reduction skill, but as per this requirement, 50% redundancy is required. Then online authorization equipment. This authorization is nothing but the smell that you get. See, this authorization is done to detect the leak in the pipeline. So this method captain is dosed or injected into the gas pipelines, and because of that, the gas get odorized, and if any leakage is there, so you can smell that gas because of this odorization system. So every network should have this odorization system within 1 year. They should have this system of the odorization equipments should be in place within 1 year. This implementation is required for the earlier, those who are already operating the natural gas distribution network, and for the new one, they should have this in place before actually commissioning of the pipelines. Then the height of the vent should be minimum 3 meters above the working level. So somewhere at the maybe CGS or maybe at DRS reduction where the pressure is reduced, the vents are provided to let the overpressure or the excess gas go to the atmosphere, but that height should be minimum 3 meters from the working level. And the gas detectors is also required in critical locations are given this, but the gas detectors are required to detect the gas. If any gas is detected, these are the leak prone areas where maybe at CGS or maybe at DRS, that location gas detectors are required, and those should be in place within 1 year. Then the pressure reduction, that is the DRS with having the 50% redundancy, that is again a requirement, and also including 2 safety devices. At least one of them should be a slam shut-off valve and for overpressure protection. So for the pressure protection, these valves are also required, and 50% redundancy is required, and the time frame given is 2 years. Then the steel reinforced rubber hoses that should comply to this IS standard within 6 months. These rubber hoses are required for the domestic or commercial consumers. Then the pipeline test records and radiography. When the pipeline is laid, so the test records of that pipeline that should be available, and the cover. So these normally these pipelines are the buried pipelines. Those are underground pipelines. So the depth of that pipeline, that minimum cover required, that is again given in the notification, and that testing records should be available with the entity, and if it's not, then they should get it arranged from their contractors within 3 months. And the HSSE, that is nothing but the health safety environment management system, that should be in place for the entire gas line pipeline network within 6 months. And the emergency response plan for the probable emergencies and the mitigation plan for those emergencies. So that should be made, that should be available with the written procedures, emergency procedures. And it is also requirement to have the emergency control room, minimum one for one network, and the manned round the clock. It should be manned round the clock, so that any emergency within the network that can be identified and mitigated with the help of this emergency control room, with an effective communication system and the emergency vehicles. To respond to that emergency, the emergency vehicles are required. So these are the few of the critical requirements. Now we will go one by one, and the information that I am giving you or covered in the notification, these are not much in detail in terms of the technical or the standard or the specification type requirements. It is just to make you just aware of what are exactly covered in this material and equipment. So basically the ductile iron pipelines are not permitted. Then the plastic pipes, tubes and fittings, PE pipes conforming to these standards are required. So whenever the material is purchased by that network, and when it is being laid, it should be verified that those are compliant to these requirements. So the entity should have the suppliers, approved suppliers for manufacturing these kind of equipments, and the inspection should also be done whether those are meeting, the material is meeting to those requirements or not. Then the color of the pipeline, that is also very important. So for the gas service is yellow. So you may see when new network is laid down, so you can see this P pipeline with the yellow colors. So that is for P80 grade, and the orange color is for the P100 grade plug. This pipeline shall be permanently marked. So the pipelines, when it is manufactured, so it is the requirements or the pipe standards and the other requirements, they are embossed on that pipeline, so that it can be permanently available on this pipeline to identify what kind of pipeline is this or pipe is this. Then the galvanized iron pipe should be used above ground pipelines. So whatever the steel pipelines or the PE pipelines, those can be underground, but the galvanized iron pipeline should be above ground service up to the consumer meters or meter control valve, and use of the copper tubes, that should be after consumer. So those who can have their pipe natural gas for at connections at your home, you can also observe that the galvanized pipeline prior to that meter, and after that copper tubing is done for this from that meter till the stove, that stove that you are using, chula. Then the PE pipeline shall not be used above ground pipelines. MDPE pipeline, the pressures of 49 bar or the 7 bar up to 4 bar, you can have it, you should have it below ground, and PE pipeline should not be used above ground. Then the steel reinforced rubber conforms with this also a requirement. Then the piping components, the standards specifications are given in this notification, and the material required the piping material or the other material that should conform to those requirements. And the schedule is, the annexure 2 is given for this standards for the particular different atoms, like maybe steel pipelines, then fittings, then the PU pipelines, MDP pipelines, and the fittings for that. So for the materials required for that, they were building that network, so they should be complied to that annexure 2, where the manufacturer standards are listed, and prior to installation it should be confirmed that the material is conforming to the standard requirements. Coming to the second schedule, that is for the welding. So welding is done as per the API 1104, the American Petroleum Institute 1104. This particular API is required for the welding procedure and welder qualification. So for actual welding of the steel pipelines, we should have a proper procedure, and the person, that welder who is actually doing that welder, he should be a qualified person, and they should be qualified, and the procedure should be as per the API 1104. Then the welding procedures and welders for the station pipeline, where the above ground pipelines, so this should be qualified as per the ASME boiler pressure code section, as per the section 9 or API 1104, both can be used for that. For the all NDT, including the radiographic examination, NDT is nothing but the non-destructive testing, to just test whether the welding joint is correctly done, and for that the welder should be qualified and the welding procedure should be approved as per the API 1104 requirements. And radiographic testing is done, whether to check the joints, whether they are correctly welded or any defects are there in their welding joints. So that is verified by having the radiographic examination, and the acceptance criteria is performed, and the acceptance criteria is as per the API 1104, but the no root cracks is permitted. So cracks are not at all permitted. The other defects, though the API 1104 has given for each defect what can be the acceptance criteria is given that. So you have to refer that and accept or reject the radiography examination based on the radiographic film interpretation. And the weld having defects shall be removed or repaired according to API 1104. So if any defects are observed, so that can be repaired. So decision is taken depending upon the severity and the type of the defect, but that can be removed or repaired as per this applicable API 1104 or SME boiler and pressure vessel code section 9. Then coming to this 1C, that is the piping system components and the fabrication details. So those requirements are covered under the schedule 1C. So various pipeline components, pipeline manufacturer conform to the standards. Well bodies, bonnets, covers or flanges, they should be made of the cast iron or ductile iron and meet the STMA 395 and shall not be used for this CGD network. So here basically it talks about the system components, like the in between walls, then the flanges, fittings, and their fabrication. So flanges made of the cast iron, ductile iron, or non-ferrous material that should not be used in the network, and all stirred bolts and nuts used in CGD network shall not be hot dipped galvanized. So here basically what is required is given in this annexure A of this notification, but what is not required is basically covered in this slide. So the flanges should, for this iron or ductile iron should not be used, or the bolts and nuts hot dip galvanized is not used. So the annexure 1 is referred for the standards and specifications required for these different piping components and the piping component systems. Then the fitting made of cast iron or ductile iron shall not be used. Then the thermoplastic or thermosetting fittings shall not be used in the above ground pipelines. Mechanical fittings or marking hot taps on the pipelines and mains shall not be used. Fittings for hot taps shall be welded type, and all plastic fittings used in the CGD network must have been tested for an internationally recognized testing agency prior to their use. So these are the basic important requirements under this Schedule 3. In detail with the standard or the specification requirements and further in detail requirements are given in this notification Schedule C. So few important requirements I have covered in that too in the broad manner. Then coming to the 1D, that is the design, installation and testing. So as discussed or as informed earlier, the typical CGD network will have the primary network, then the secondary network and the tertiary network. And it will also have a CGS, city gas station, where the gas is received from the gale at high pressure and then it is filtered and it is regulated with the pressure reduction skid, and then after from this city gate station the gas is further taken into the steel pipelines for further distribution in the network. So this city gate station requirements for that designing that CGS is also covered in this. Then the distribution pressure regulation stations, DPRS or district regulating stations. So in between after the city gate station, the pipeline, steel pipeline, and then after the gradually the pressure is reduced. Once the pipeline is laying from steel gas to MDP, the pressure is reduced, and from MDP to the tertiary network, the pressure is again reduced. So these are the regulating stations, the pressure regulating stations. Then the individual pressure regulator stations, IPRS. For individual customer, there is also a pressure regulating system, maybe for the industrial customers or commercial customers, where the gas pressure is required is high, and the consumption or the supply is also in bulk. So to regulate that pressure or flow, that regulating station is also there for individual pressure, individual customers also given, and the service regulators for the individual customers. So design, installation and testing for all these is covered in this. Then facilities forming for the CGD networks are covered in the range shall be designed. The basis of the design is also given, that is the range of flow rates and the pressure required. It again depends, the design again depends upon the network area, geographical area, then the flow rates required or the pressure required. Because for this industrial network, for that network, you are supplying devices, gas is supplied to the industrial customers where the flow rate required is more, the pressure is also required more, and with the same network, you are the entity is also supplying gas to a individual residence where the flow rate is very low, that these gas supplies are also not required continuously, and with a very low pressure, that is 100 millibar pressure. It's a very low pressure, just to that pressure is just to move their glass, flow of that glass gas. So you have different types of customers, different types of flow requirements and the pressure requirements. So design should be considered taken these requirements while designing the networks. Then the quality of gas, including cleanliness. This of course depends upon the supply of gas. How far clean gas and the quality of the gas, it again depends upon the gas supply that is received by the city gate at the city gate station for that particular network. Then the metering requirements for individual customers and for the industrial customers, metering requirements are different. Then the noise control. So noise maybe at this city gate station where the flow rate is more, the noise control is also a requirement, and that is need to be taken care at the design stage. And the corrosion protection, basically these pipelines, steel pipelines, the corrosion protection to maintain the design life of that steel pipeline. because it get corroded. Once it is corroded, it need the chances of leaking of that gas or the emergency and subsequent fire that can also happen. So leakage, to prevent this leakage or the decay in this steel pipeline, the corrosion protection is required. So what kind of corrosion protection is required? Depending upon the soil and the pipe and the network requirements, the design should also cover the corrosion protection system requirements. Then few of the aspects are also considered in designing or deciding the layout of the facilities. So where, especially where your shitting station should be, where your pressure reducing skids or pressure regulating system should be. So here these, the type and size of the equipments, then the piping, P&IDs, the utility requirements, vents where the vents are required, then the operation and maintenance philosophy, how frequently maintenance is required, whether the maintenance equipments or the person are able to make can conduct the maintenance of that. So that can be seen, and the inter distances between the facilities at city gas stations. So different criteria, maybe skid is different, then your control room is there, the detection system is there, then the your boundary wall is there. Some of the inter distances are also considered in designing or deciding the layout of the facilities. So facilities shall be provided with proper boundary wall and fencing with gates. So this is also a very important requirement. So whatever the regarding this gas distribution and the facilities, those should be provided with the boundary wall, where you have the pressure reducing skids or the city gate station or different pressure regulating stations. You should have boundary wall or fencing in line with the Ministry of Home Affairs guidelines. So that is again a requirement while designing. Then the buried pipeline inside the CGS area should have minimum depth of 1.2 meters. So within the city gate station, if the buried pipelines are there, they should have the minimum depth of 1.2 meters. That is the distance of the pipeline below the ground level. And where the buried pipelines come out of the ground, there should be a coating at least 300 mm above ground. The coating basically is also provide added protection for the corrosion protection point of view. And again, when it come out, it should have at least 3 mm coating above the ground. Then the height of vents that we have seen at the critical, it should be minimum 3 meters from the working level. And the distance between vent and boundary wall, that should be minimum 5 meters. Then the gas detector, this is again a critical requirement that should be installed at the critical strategic locations. Then the DPRS facilities can be located above ground or below ground, and the IPRS shall be normally above ground. DPRS, district pressure regulating stations, and the individual pressure regulating system, they should be considered. DPRS can be above ground or below ground, but IPRS should be above ground only. Then the electrical area classification. So the zones need to be identified, and the selection of the equipments shall be done as per the IS 5572, considering the electrical area classification, because these are the hazardous areas. Then the all electrical equipments operating about 250 volts shall have two separate and distinct connection to earth grids. This is basically the protection, the earthing of these equipments, and two are required from safety point of view. And safety separate earthing grid is required for the instrument and electric power. So there should be two different earth grids. Then the lightning protection should be provided for the city gate station, and that should be as per this IS 2309, to protect the facility or the station from the lightning. Then the minimum thickness of the pipe shall be not be less than 6.4 mm. This is basically the steel pipeline, and the pipeline thickness should not be less than 6.4, irrespective of the grade of the pipeline. And where the existing, where some of the networks, those are already laid pipelines less than 6.4 meters, then they should conduct the risk assessment, quantitative risk assessment study, and whatever the require, if in that the outcome of the study requires some corrective measures, then the entity should take the corrective measures to reduce or to bring this risk level to as low as reasonably possible. So this is again for the networks which are laid prior to this notification 2000, that is year 2008. So they should have, they need not to replace that steel pipeline with the new pipelines with this 6.4 meter thickness pipeline, but they should get this quantitative risk assessment study done and see whether any controls or some corrective measures are required from the risk level point of view. Then the protection against the overpressure. So the overpressure may be because of the circumstances in the distribution of the pipelines. Somewhere the overpressure is also a possibility, and that overpressure will result nothing but the bursting of the pipeline and the gas coming out of the pipelines, and there could be a fire. So protection is also required for overpressure for the city gas distribution, and that is provided with the active or monitor regulating system, regulating adequately sized pressure relief walls at strategic locations, and overpressure shut-off walls or sham shut-off walls. So in that network at strategic locations, these regulator system is also required, and these relief walls are also required to maintain the pressure of the pipeline. You should have these relief walls or the pressure shut-off walls, and where you have these relief walls, in association with this you will also have the vents to let that gas, and that should be with at a height of 3 meter of the working area. In order to protect the overpressure, creep wall also used, and for isolation of the network during emergency, quick closing wall, remote isolation. So if you have emergency because of the overpressure, so pipeline is busted and the gas is coming out, so the first and effective method is to isolate that section. You should have the isolation walls, and that wall should be remotely operated. So to isolate that particular section in case of emergency, to let the gas come out and burn, and to control that emergency, you should have the walls given in the network, and that should be installed at the inlet of city gas station to stop the gas to this network. So you should have a quick closing wall at the inlet of the city gas station. So this is a requirement from the emergency point of view. These are the top cover requirements. So basically these pipelines, where if you see when it is distributed, so these pipelines are laid maybe along the road, or you can see the trenches are made and the pipeline is laid below ground. So these are the requirements. The pipeline should have a minimum cover, the depth of the pipeline from that surface ground level. So minimum cover required is given in this, and at different cover requirements for the steel pipelines. This is basically for the steel pipelines, where the normal or rocky terrain, where you have normal or rocky type of soil, below ground soil, then the minimum cover should be 1. Then the river or canal or nala crossing, where the pipeline is laid below that. So one HDD, horizontal direction drilling, is done, and the pipeline is laid below that river or the canal or the nala crossing. But in that case, the minimum depth cover should be 1.5 below that river bed or the canal bed or the nala crossing bed. It should be below 1.5 meter. Like major river crossings, it should be 1.5 below river bed. Then the rocky beds, then the drains, nalas, lined those are controlled. The below it is lined, concrete is also maybe there. Then the drainage, ditches, then rocky areas. So these are the minimum cover that should be followed. That means the drain should be this much depth below ground, and your pipeline should have minimum this cover. These are the that should be considered in the installation of the pipelines. Then very important thing is the clearance between the pipelines and the other underground structures. So normally you can find ducts, utility ducts in the maybe in the metros and the major cities alongside the road. You will have one duct wherein the all utility cables, maybe it may be a electric cable, it may be a optic fiber cable, it may be the other cables. So those are carried in one duct, and along with that one the in that duct the pipelines, the gas pipelines are also covered or taken through that duct. So the minimum requirement with the between the two pipelines or the other structures, underground structures or other facilities or pipelines, what are the minimum clearance required, that is given here. Then when a buried steel pipeline, underground pipeline, cable, drain or other service, the pipeline should be at least 30 mm below from such services, 300 mm below. And when the pipeline laid parallel to any existing underground cable or drain or other utilities, there should be a clear distance of 300 mm required from the existing utility. So whenever you along with the other utilities, a pipeline is also laid in a common duct, a 300 mm distance, clear distance is required, and minimum separation of 3 meters is required between steel pipeline main or footing of the transmission tower. For electrical transmission tower is there, so there should be a minimum 3 meter separation distance between the footing of the power transmission tower and the steel pipeline. And the clear distance between new steel pipeline or main running pipeline parallel to the existing pipeline should be minimum 3 meters. So it may be a case of the expansion where you have one pipeline already laid, steel pipeline, and in parallel you also required to lay one more pipeline. So between these two, the existing pipeline and the new upcoming steel pipeline, there should be a 3 meter distance. So these are the clearance distance requirements. While laying the more than one new hydrocarbon pipelines in the same trench, then a separation distance of 5 mm required, 500 mm required. Then the miter bends and wrinkle bends are not permitted. So fabricated bends are not permitted in the pipelines, and the full bore ball valve shall be used when making branch connections using hot taps. Whenever you have the hot taps, that is the connection taken from the main line, full bore ball body required, ball valve is required. Now coming to the testing part of this network, after construction, when the pipeline is laid and prior to the commissioning, testing is done, and then after actual commissioning is done. Regarding the testing requirements, all steel pipelines and mains shall be pressure tested after installation using a water as a test medium, and minimum test pressure should be 1.4 times of the maximum allowable operating pressure. So basically this hydro test is conducted to detect the leakage, if any leakage is there in the pipeline. So this allowable pressure, you have a design pressure and allowable pressure. So the allowable pressure is nothing but the allowable pressure for the gas in that pipeline. So you know that pressure, the hydro test is done 1.5 times of that allowable pressure, and by using a water test medium as a water. So this hydro test is done for the 24 hours. Then the hold up time for the pressure should be minimum 24 hours for the underground and 4 hours for the above ground. So the pressure, required pressure is also given. then the required time, that is 24 hours for the below ground, and for above ground and it is continuously monitored for any reduction in the pressure. So to conclude whether any leakage is observed in the pipeline or not. Then the firefighting equipment should be available during the commissioning. Whenever gas commissioning is nothing but the actually charging the gas into pipelines. So when it happens, there are chances that because of the pressure or because of the maybe leakage, the gas may come out, and there could be a possibility of emergency. Then firefighting equipment should be ready. What kind of firefighting requirement equipment is required, that is also given in the notification. And a proper emergency response plan that we have seen for each network. They should have the identified emergencies and the response plan for each emergency, and the emergency contact numbers should be readily available. Then regarding the plastic pipes and the tubings, joints and connections, threaded pipes plus threaded joints are not at all permitted. Then the plastic pipe joints shall be made of electrofusion fitting only. Fusion fitting shall have inbuilt positioning provision up to 660 mm and beyond external clamps. Directly bodied thermoplastic pipe shall have a minimum thickness of 2.3 mm. Here the pipe thickness for the plastic pipe is given, and the bed of the train shall be free from sharp edges. So whenever you lay the pipeline, so a soft padding is given, maybe a soft soil or maybe a sand is given to protect the pipeline from the sharp edges, objects or stone. So it should be padded with the soft soil or sand with a minimum depth of 150 mm below the pipeline. So for any pipeline, you should have the cushion, the padded soft soil or the sand cushion to protect the pipeline from the sharp edges or object or in rocky areas also. So this is nothing but to protect the pipeline from the actually puncturing that pipeline and maybe causing the leakage then after. Then the test medium shall be air or nitrogen for the plastic pipes. For steel pipeline, the medium is water, but for the plastic pipelines, it is done by air or nitrogen gas with a pressure up to 100 psig, and for the test pressure higher than 100 psi, water shall be used. It is nothing but we have seen in the primary network, secondary and tertiary. So primary is basically for steel, and it is for water is medium, test medium required for steel pipeline testing, and air and nitrogen is required for the secondary and tertiary, where the plastic pipes are laid for the gas transmission. Test duration shall be 24 hours for plastic distribution mains, length of greater than 1 kilometer, and minimum 4 hours length for shorter than 1 kilometer. It is for the pipe distance, pipeline based on the pipeline distance for the under testing. And in case of water is used as a test medium, this test duration shall start after achieving the thermostabilization. That means you should have the actual start when the pressure is stabilized and it is showing the 1.4 times of the maximum allowable pressure. So then only the test is actually test duration started. Then the walls should be installed below ground with a wall operating device readily accessible. It is regarding the other equipments, those are required to install in the pipeline. One is the wall size of 4 inch and above shall be fitted with double block and bleed facility. Walls may be provided with either side of the water body crossing, or to isolate the sections, to control the emergency and to isolate the sections, the walls are placed in between the pipelines so that you can isolate the sections. And the wall distance is also given for steel distribution network. The spacing between the walls should not be more than 3 kilometers. So ideally the wall should be placed after every minimum 3 kilometers, maximum 3 kilometers. Prior within that 3 kilometers, you should have the wall It is nothing but to isolate the section for the maintenance purpose or for the emergency purpose. And in plastic distribution means the spacing should not be more than 1 kilometer. So this is basically a design point of view or actual installation point of view. This interdistance, wall spacing is required, and above ground services shall be galvanized iron or copper or steel pipeline protected by the anti-corrosive coating. So coating is also required for that. In service connections, direct connections of the galvanized or copper services lines to underground plastics shall not be used. Appliances shall be connected to gas with a flexible braided hose. So this is nothing but the hose pipeline that we have in our house, where we get the pipeline from the city gas distribution network. And the length of this hose should be kept minimum. However, it should be more than 1.5 meters, and both ends of the hose shall be firmly clamped on the nozzle by metallic clamps. So this you can see it at your home connections. These are the requirements given for the connections to the plastic mains. Now coming to the operational maintenance procedures. So this is nothing but the once the pipeline is commissioned, it is now under operation, and a maintenance is also required. A periodic maintenance. The schedule this talks also about the periodic maintenance required, the periodicity required, what maintenance is required, what type of maintenance required for and are at what frequency, that is also considered. So that is nothing but the planned or the preventive, and the breakdown. In case of the breakdown, you should also have the breakdown maintenance procedure in place. So this basically following procedure shall be prepared. So these are considered as the mandatory procedures. One is the emergency management system to safely handle the emergency with minimum risk. This is nothing but the procedure for the emergency management. So once if you have emergency in the network, how you will manage that emergency. So that is by handling of the emergency, safe handling of these emergencies. Then the disaster management plan, consider offsite and on-site emergency response plan, and the mutual aid system. So this is again nothing but the disaster management plan, on-site and off-site emergencies, that within the installation and outside the installation, maybe in the pipeline area, if any emergencies, then the emergency response plan that, and again the mutual aid system, that is the support from the different organizations where they have the infrastructure or the facilities to support the network or to support the entity in case of emergencies. Then the hazard identification process, that is the hazards and operability. So this process is also required. What kind of hazards are there, that identification, the process for identification of the hazards to that network. Then the safety and technical competency requirement systems. So this is also very important, competency requirements of the personnel who are there in the operation and maintenance departments, and the operational health and safety legal applicability matrix and compliance to that environment. So once the pipeline is operation, the legal requirements are also applicable apart from this PNJRB requirements, and compliance to that health and safety related legal requirements. So that also need to be identified, and they should be also monitored and for the compliance to those requirements. So that is again you should have the entity should have the procedure for identifying those legal applicability and the compliance to that matrix. Then the essential feature of the operational maintenance plan, the entity should have the operational maintenance plan, and what all should cover in that operational maintenance plan, the preventive maintenance plan in accordance with the OEM, original equipment manufacturer, preventive maintenance plan, what need to be maintained, preventive maintenance, what should be covered and at what frequency. When designed, periodic inspection of facilities, inspection of the pipeline, inspection of the walls and other facilities. Then the calibration of the meters, gauges and instruments placed on this. So monitor the pressure and flow the flow meters, the gauges, the pressure gauges, and the other instruments affecting the quality and safety. So then the calibration plan, periodicity of that frequency of that calibration. Then the plan for functioning test of pressure regulators and control equipments. So these control equipments or the pressure system, they should be periodically functionally tested, whether they are functioning properly. So that also need to be tested. Then the isolation scheme, isolation of the pipelines, isolation of the networks, that also need to be considered in the O&M, and the limits of the operating parameters, like the minimum or the maximum limit for the pressure, the gas pressure inside the pipeline, then the temperature, gas temperature in the pipeline, then the flow rates based on the design and the levels. So these are the requirements that need to be covered in the operation and maintenance plan. Then alarm management system to monitor, analyze, segregate, and appropriate action. So the alarms could be for the high pressure, high temperature, any gas detection. So in that case, you should have the alarm system, the indication of that man, the indicator, then monitoring of that, then analyzing whether it's a real alarm or a false alarm, then actually appropriate action. If any alarm is there, then the appropriate action and taking back that to normal, that is also cover under the O&M plan. Then the work permit system. So any maintenance personnel, the work permit should be taken prior to the work. Then the procedure for log operations activities to monitor the continuously monitoring of the pressure, temperature, and the other parameters. You should have a log to demonstrate that yes, the pipeline is working or operating under the designed conditions or the operational requirements. Then the PPEs, personal protective equipments by the or operating personnel as and when required and as per the requirements. Then do's and don'ts and the safety precautions during the O&M for operation and maintenance, do's and don'ts to the nearby personnel or to the personnel or maintenance staff, and the written emergency procedures, what the probable emergencies and their mitigation plan. Again, the accident and emergency reporting procedure. Any accident or incident, or maybe a pipeline leakage, a gas leakage, or fire, or any kind of emergency. So that emergency reporting procedure. Then the training to the employees who are doing the operation and maintenance, periodic trainings. Then liaising with policies and procedures, liaising with the different departments or the within the entity and with the outside also, maybe the statutory and regulatory bodies and other the municipality related departments and all, the liaising. Then the educational program, public awareness program. The public should be made aware that the pipeline is laid heavy, higher pressure pipe, and do's and don'ts for them. So if you want to dig in that particular area, so you should contact the personnel actually tracing of that pipeline. So the public awareness for the consumers and general public not to have the disturbances in the gas supply or to avoid the emergency situation. Then the pipeline failures investigation, the reasons for that pipeline failure and the investigation correct with the corrective actions. Then the prevention of the accidental ignitions, provision for site-specific risk assessment, patrolling schedule. So this pipeline need to be monitored. Patrolling is done to see whether any leakage or for any undesired activities going on. Maybe the digging into the that particular pipeline area or any theft regarding that. So patrolling schedule is required. The pipeline as patrolled or monitored by the person by walking on the pipelines to see whether the pipeline conditions are the laying conditions or the above ground area is normal and not the tampering to that area or the undue activities, unrequired activities are not going on. Then the leakage survey. Leakage survey is also conducted by the gas detection maybe handheld portable gas detection, and actually the leakage is monitored if any leakage is there or not. Then the essential features, markers are also required to actually track, to make the everybody aware that the pipeline is going below this area. Markers are required installed at a position of minimum 100 meters in urban area and 200 meters within the industrial areas for steel pipelines, to just make the general people aware that this is the pipeline is laid high pressure, and if you want to dig or any leakage or any information if you want to give, the control room number is the emergency control room number there, and uh, with this the pipeline is also traced, and the awareness is also given to the general civilians, and it's also help in emergency communication. Then the additional warning signs or markers also need to indicate the pipeline, presence of pipeline. Then squeezing off or reporting reopening of the thermoplastic pipe or tubing for pressure control. In case of emergency, the pipeline is squeezed off to stop the gas flow. So that is also covered, that should cover. And miscellaneous facility maintenance procedures, then pipeline service convention and maintenance of record. So these are the essential features, the operational maintenance related records, what are the mandatory records the entity should have. So that also mentioned in the notification, and entity should follow or maintain it. Then coming to the schedule 1F, basically the corrosion control. And the corrosion protection is required for the carbon steel pipelines or mains, NPS 2 and above, and three layer polyethylene or fusion bonded epoxy coating is recommended. So for steel pipelines, additional protection is given by this 3 layer polyethylene pipeline coating, as well as fusion epoxy coating, bonded epoxy coating, so that the pipeline is protected from the corrosion. It is the actual coating is done on the pipes at the time of manufacturing only. All buried pipe bends and fittings shall be coated with the heat slung sleeve. So pipelines are already coated, but for the bends and fittings actually installed or fabricated on those pipelines, that should be coated with the heat strung sleeves or 2-pack high build liquid epoxy coating for minimum 450 micron diaphragm thickness. And pipe shall installed so that the below grade or submerged portion are not electrical contact with the any casting, casing, forging. So it is basically to avoid the contact with the carrier or the actual pipe carrying the gas pipeline with the other electrical contact with the casing or foreign pipeline system or any metallic structure. To avoid that is required. When a high current carrying capacity is required, a multi-strand conductor is also used for the strands and shall be arranged into groups. Then attaching test lead directly to on pipeline for the monitoring for the CP monitoring system. The test leads are also attached to the pipeline or based to the pipeline. Then when considering necessary, a temporary cathodic protection system with sacrification allowed is considered at the construction phase, at the installation time, for adequate protection of the pipeline. And this can also be simultaneously keeping pace with the main pipeline or the actual installation with the monitoring periodically. So the pipeline should be protected with the temporary gas protection, cathodic protection system or permanent cathodic protection system, and that should be done simultaneously, installed simultaneously to protect the pipelines. And the records or the documents required for the corrosion control given in the notification are like cathodic protection design documents and the approval for design, for designing that particular system for that network. Then the soil resistivity survey report, soil resistivity testing of different areas covering the entire network. Then the electrical interface report, the installation and maintenance report, installation and maintenance of the catalytic protection system, that is records are required. Then material certification including dimensions, metallurgy, performance and function report. So material used in the cathodic protection system, and the material test reports for those material which material is required, installed in the or considered or used in the cathodic protection system. And this is the last schedule, schedule 1G. It is about the miscellaneous. So these requirements are also covered apart from the design. Those are the mandatory requirements for a city gas distribution network, and these are some of the miscellaneous requirements also covered. So those are maybe probably the applicable requirements for every network, and the compliance to that is also required, and what kind of compliance is required, that is given in the miscellaneous. A predetermined quantity equivalent to a maximum 12.5 ppm ethyl mercaptan, for it is the other dose odorant shall be dosed into gas system. So we saw that odorization system. So this ethyl mercaptan is dosed, and this should be considered equivalent. That means the last area, last portion of the pipeline, the ethyl mercaptan should be, the odorization should be considered till the last end of the pipeline. So if the leakage happens at the last end of the pipeline, then also the smell should come and the leak can be detected by the personnel. So that system should be in place, detection system or dosing system should be in place. Then the odors level test shall be carried out at very defined locations on the network and at network extremes. So odor levels, the smell, that can the testing is required at periodically and at different locations as well as at the extreme ends of the network. So to ensure that yes, the pipeline is odorized properly and completely, to have the purpose of leak detection, detecting the leaks is resolved. Then the other end, the absorbent like activated carbon, sawdust or dry sand, or absorbent neutralized like sodium hypochlorite for spilling. See, basically this is considered at the odorization station, where the odorize, if in case of any leakage or any spillage, then the odorization absorbent required. So it is nothing but to take care of the spillage of the odorant. Then the provision shall be made for eye wash or emergency soil need the orderly. So if in case of handling the odor, if it unfortunately if it goes into the eyes of the operator, then it should be removed immediately, and for that the eye wash and emergency salt should be located near to the odorant handling or injection system, so that in case of any splashing of that odorant in the operator eyes, it can be clearly the treatment can be given, immediate treatment, even if first aid can be given to that employee, and use of the personal protective equipments. So this particular where in what cases, under what circumstances these personal protective equipment should be used, that is also considered for the odorant, handling of the odorant. Basically these miscellaneous requirements are for the odorants. Thank you. What are this notification is very big and different. Apart from the notification requirements, different standards and specifications are also referred in conjunction of using this notification. So I tried to cover it as less technical and more informative regarding the natural gas distribution network, that everybody those are like in metros and major cities are for upcoming also. So this will help you us to know about the gas distribution network and what are the right from design and what are stages and what are the important requirements given in the tender. Of course, after every 3 years, the audit, as mentioned earlier, the Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, PNGRB, they monitor the compliance to this standard by conducting the audits every 3 years. So they have their auditing system. They have their competency is also defined for the auditors who actually do the audit, their education and their work experience required competency. Then the checklist is also made to check the important requirements, whether those are complied by right from the design till the operational maintenance, those requirements are complied or not. So PNGRB also have the checklist for conducting the audits, and the frequency is every 3 years. So every 3 years, the CGD network should get their T4S audit done by the PNGRB approved agencies, and when required, PNGRB also visit to that entity, and they can also random sample or on surprise basis they can also do the audit. And in case if any incident or accident happened, reportable accident happened, then also T4S audit may be recommended by the PNGRB to the entity to get the T4S audit done for the network. So PNGRB also monitoring compliance to the standard requirements, and it is ensured that right from design and pipeline laying, it is ensured by the entity that the PNGRB notification requirements are complied, and accordingly the records are generated to ensure that the compliance, for the pipeline laying, design, laying, testing, and actually operation and maintaining those pipelines. And it is seen in the audit actual physical verification of the sites on random, and then verifying these records and the procedures and the competence of the personnel. The actual audit is done, and the observations are reported to the entity, and they need to take the corrective actions for that and submit the corrective actions taken report to the PNGRB. So this is what about the PNGRB, monitoring of PNGRB for this network in terms of the compliance to this T4S audits. And ICS is one of the third-party inspection agency approved by the PNGRB to conduct the T4S audits for the pipeline network, T4S networks, and ICS is also approved for the construction activities and the operational maintenance related in operation activities. The T4S audits at the construction stage as well as at the operational and maintenance stage. So with this, I conclude this presentation. Hope on very short notice it was told to me, but the slides were available with me so that I can take you through this T4S requirements, and hope you have learned something about this network, T4S requirements for the CGD network. And now I will quickly, if any questions, answers required, because it's already 12:25.
Yogesh ji, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir, please.
मेरा खुद का HPCL का बैकग्राउंड है, I worked there.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
getting a lot of मेरे जो पुराने लोग हैं अभी जो PNGRD में चले गए ना जॉइंट वेंचर्स में.
Yes, sir.
Now connections तो बहुत अच्छे हैं सब में. I was only wondering कि इन लोगों में बहुत confusion है. वो दो तरह का IMS की बात चलती है वहाँ पे, and IMS उनके हिसाब से IMS means integrity management system.
Yes, sir.
IMS also means integrated management system.
Yes,
समझ गए?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
अच्छा, जब हम मिलने जाते हैं तो they are not clear whether I want integrated management or integrative management. बोलते हमको regulator ने बोला IMS करने का.
Yes, sir.
बराबर?
Yes, sir.
अभी मैं आपको recent example बताता हूँ. HP का RNC building में there is one Mr. Prasad. वो HP की एक HP natural gas करके कंपनी है. नहीं, उसका नाम है HP Renewables. बराबर? एक है HP ऑयल गैस है, एक HP ऑयल गैस है और एक HP रिन्यूएबल. दोनों CGD में है,
Yes, sir.
अब ये IMS और IM क्या उनको व्हाट शुड बी आवर रिस्पांस कि साहब आप दोनों कर लो एक साथ ही, इंटीग्रिटी मैनेजमेंट एंड इंटीग्रेटेड मैनेजमेंट। इंटीग्रेटेड में आपको सर्टिफिकेट मिलेगा 9/14/45 का। और
Yes.
नाउ टेल मी वन थिंग,
Yes, sir.
जब IMS कोई करता है मतलब अपने वाला जो सर्टिफाइंग वाला IMS 9/14/45, उसमें इंटीग्रिटी मैनेजमेंट ऑटोमेटिकली कवर हो जाएगा?
No, sir. Now, let me just few things clear to you and as well as others. The notification that we have covered is the T4S requirements, and you also have seen that one of the requirement is the HSSC management, that is an health and safety environment management system. So each network should have that in place, the HSSC management system in place, and to demonstrate that in place HSSC management system, they should have the IMS certification covering the health safety, that is OHSMS, as well as the environment management system. So apart from QMS, these two are also required. This is the notification requirement. And the second point you have raised about the IMS, that is another notification issued by the PNGRB itself that talks about the pipeline integrity management, and that notification also demand the HSSC management. So this HSSC management is a requirement from the PNGRB, that is a regulatory board, for every network. So ideally the network should have the IMS certification, that is the health OHSMS 45,000 as well as the EMS. So this is mandatory as per this PNGRB notification requirement to entity. So they should have the IMS system in place, integrated management system. And second is the pipeline integrated management system. This is something different than the management system that IMS we normally talk about. For that also PNGRB has a different notification for the city gas distribution network, and like this T4S, the requirements are also identified, and this is those are different requirement than the requirements covered in the IMS, that is the OHSMS and the EMS. So one of the requirements of that pipeline integrity management system is the entity should have this IMS certification, and if you have that IMS also, you need to have this compliance to that regulatory board, that the IMS notification. So for any CGD network, they should have the integrated management system certification for the EMS and OHSMS, and apart from that, they should also have a compliance requirement for the PNGRB notification, that is the pipeline integrity management system.
ठीक है, वो आपने ठीक है, आपने बहुत क्लैरिफाई किया। माय ओनली वरी इज कि अगर इनको क्या हो रहा है ना, मैं ईमानदारी से बताऊं, मैंने मोस्ट ऑफ देम हैव कम ऑन डेप्यूटेशन फ्रॉम द पेरेंट कंपनीज, और ये जितना भी CGD है आपने देखा वो सब जॉइंट वेंचर्स है, दे आर ऑल JVs,
Yes, correct.
And then other than Mahanagar Gas, I don't think anybody else has got integrated management system. अभी तक लिया नहीं है किसी ने भी। I don't know, ICS ने भी शायद, मुझे नहीं लगता है कि इंटीग्रेटेड मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम का ऑडिट किया। उन्होंने PNGRB ऑडिट किया है।
Yes.
Correct, no?
Correct, sir. Correct.
Now when I go there to discuss with them, they talk about competence.
You can also refer them this notification. This is also a requirement for the CGD network, and here clearly as a critical activity, in that critical activity side, it is mentioned that the entity should have the HSSC management system is in place. So to demonstrate that, they should have this IMS certification. Otherwise, demonstrating may be a challenge to them that HSSC is in place.
नहीं, बट IMS को रेगुलेटर ने कंपलसरी नहीं बनाया। दे सेड कि यू शुड हैव HSSC सिस्टम। ना HSSC में
सिस्टम इन प्लेस,
वो क्या करते हैं, रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कर लेते हैं, हैजार्ड आइडेंटिफिकेशन, और इतना करके छोड़ देते हैं मतलब। एंड ऑफ कोर्स दे हैव द अदर प्लान्स, टेस्टिंग, कैलिब्रेशन, वो सब तो रहता ही है। पर नाउ एक्चुअली आई वांटेड टू प्रमोट इट इन PNGRB कि अब कहीं ना अभी जैसे 1-2 ने लिया है 20 में से, बाकी सब दे आर ट्राइंग टू गेट, बट उन लोगों में आपस में ये हो जाता है कि वंस वी आर डूइंग इंटीग्रेटिव मैनेजमेंट, व्हाई डू वी नीड इंटीग्रेट? नाउ इंटीग्रेटेड मैनेजमेंट, कभी कभी कोई ऑडिट होता है PNGRB का, उस ऑडिट रिपोर्ट में कोई पर्टिकुलर कंपनी में ऑडिटर लिख के चला जाता है कि यू शुड डू दिस थिंग सर्टिफाइड IMS सिस्टम, ना। तो थोड़ा सा ICS आई थिंक शुड, अभी आप पोटेंशियल बहुत ज्यादा है, अभी
बहुत ज्यादा है सर।
हम बात कर रहे हैं 2 कंपनी से, बट PNGR भी कंप्लायंस तो ऑटोमेटिकली फिर IMS में ऑडिट हो ही जाएगा ना।
नहीं, क्या होता है सर, फॉर द सेफ्टी रिक्वायरमेंट्स, सो they can always depend on the from the safety point of view, safety requirement point of view, by following this notification requirement, but environment is not covered in these notifications. This T4S already talks about the safety standards, so that way they can defend that we have that HSSC health and safety is in place, but for the environment not much requirements are given in this notification. To demonstrate for EMS compliance, that way you can also take up with the
नहीं, I tried to, but you know उसमें एक I'll tell you कि वो रिस्की है उस टेरिटरी में, क्वालिटी इज नॉट कवर्ड, क्वालिटी वो अपन बोल सकते हैं, बिकॉज क्वालिटी का इसमें बहुत ज्यादा स्ट्रेस नहीं है, बट द ओनली थिंग इज एनवायरमेंट। तो अभी क्या हो गया है, there is nothing like a separate environment and separate safety. Any safety management system is also an environment management system. Correct. समझ गए ना आप? So you cannot differentiate. You cannot differ. अभी ऑयल स्पिलेज है, जैसे टर्मिनल्स में ऑयल स्पिलेज हो जाता है, तो is it a safety hazard or environmental hazard? It is both, you know.
Both.
Similarly, गैस का अगर लीकेज होता है पाइपलाइन से, तो it is an environmental hazard and safety.
Correct.
Actually क्या हम लिखते सेफ्टी है, but it is actually an environmental hazard which is affecting the safety of people. आप समझ गए ना?
Yes.
वो एटीट्यूड है। नो नन ऑफ अस, अगर हम बोलते हैं ना कि एनवायरनमेंट सेपरेट है सेफ्टी से, तो कई बार हम लोग है ना बेवकूफ बन जाते हैं। ऑनेस्टली वी शुड नॉट बी सेइंग इट टू क्वालिफाइड पीपल कि एनवायरनमेंट का, वो बोलेगा मेरा क्या नहीं है बताओ भैया एनवायरनमेंट का, ये जितना भी सब कुछ है एनवायरनमेंट प्रोटेक्शन के लिए तो हो रहा है सब। आप समझ गए ना? सो दैट दिस स्केल, अभी देखो क्या होता है, एनवायरमेंट एक्सीडेंट क्या होता है, व्हेन अ सेफ्टी एक्सीडेंट एक्सीड्स अ पर्टिकुलर लेवल एंड स्केल, इट बिकम्स एन एनवायरमेंटल एक्सीडेंट, यू नो।
करेक्ट।
तो इसको मैं सबको, ऑल ऑफ अस हु आर प्रेजेंट हियर टुडे, मतलब आई विश टू स्टेट हियर, डोंट टेक दिस टू थिंग्स एज सेपरेट। वो स्टैंडर्ड सेपरेट कर दिया उन लोगों ने, वो अलग बात है, ISO ने। आप समझ रहे हो ना? एक्चुअली
करेक्ट सर, करेक्ट, वेरी थिन लाइन बिटवीन दी,
देयर इज एक्चुअली ऑनेस्टली देयर थिन लाइन आप बोल रहे हो, उससे माइक्रो लाइन है, खाली माइक्रो लाइन है।
करेक्ट सर, व्हेन इट कम्स टू द गैस इट्स माइक्रो लाइन। करेक्ट सर,
बिकॉज आप देखो न्यूक्लियर में भी क्या होगा, इफ देयर इज अ रेडिएशन लीकेज इट बिकम्स एन एनवायरमेंटल इमरजेंसी, नो? तो रेडिएशन तो क्या है, इट इज अ सेफ्टी हैजार्ड, नो रेडिएशन। लेकिन जैसे वो मास स्केल पे जाता है एनवायरमेंटल हैजार्ड बन जाता है। एंड एनवायरमेंटल डिस्ट्रक्शन मींस व्हाट? डिस्ट्रक्शन ऑफ योर ओन सेफ्टी। अगर आपका पॉल्यूशन में गैस लीकेज हो रहा है ना एनवायरमेंट में, व्हाट इज इट? इज बेसिकली हेल्थ सेफ्टी हैजार्ड, नो? बेसिकली ना। तो एनीवे, तो अभी है ना, मतलब मुझे थोड़ा सा बाद में वील हैव अ टॉक ऑन दिस, ये चालू तो किया है लोगों ने, धीरे धीरे कर रहे हैं, दे आर इंटरेस्टेड। इंटीग्रिटी तो उनका मैंडेटरी है, तो करना ही है, लेकिन IMS जो है वो मैंडेटरी नहीं है अभी, मतलब
बट स्पेशली फॉर द CGD यू आर राइट सर। CGD जो पुराने है उसमें है, लेकिन बाकी गेल में भी एक्सेस मिलता है, जो अलग उनका CGD में कवर नहीं होता है, वो नेचुरल गैस पाइपलाइन का रिक्वायरमेंट कवर होता है, बट मोर और लेस दे हैव दैट IMS सर्टिफिकेशन, बट फॉर CGD नहीं है।
CGD में नहीं है, CGD में खाली मैं देखता हूँ वेबसाइट, मैंने सबका स्टडी किया 20 कंपनी का, बाकी खाली महानगर को छोड़ के, महानगर गैस के पास है, others have not really done it actually, है ना?
Yes.
Anyway, चलो ठीक है,
we can promote sir. Yes, quickly any questions? No questions, then I will hand over to Yukta.
Hello.
Yes
चांदेकर साहेब, ऑलरेडी बऱ्याच CGD मध्ये असं होतंय की आता जो इथाइल मार्क कॅप्टन जो आपला ऑर्डर आपण ऍड करतो, बऱ्याच इथे एक स्पॉट लीक म्हणून आता यूज करणं चालू झालेलं आहे.
ओके.
हा, तर त्याच्याबद्दल काही सांगू शकाल का? कारण आता माझे 1-2 फ्रेंडनी बी इंटरव्ह्यू दिले होते, तर त्याला बी तोच इंटरव्ह्यू क्वेश्चन झाला होता. लेटेस्ट आता एमएनजीएल झालं, बरेचसे सीजीडी मध्ये स्पॉट लीक युज करणं चालू केलेलं आहे, पण बऱ्याच ठिकाणी ते अजून अपडेट झालेलं नाही. असं काय नेमकं ते इथाइल मर्कॅप्टन हे करायचं का स्पॉट लीक हे करायचं?
एक्चुअली इथाइल मर्कैप्टन जो है ना, ये इससे रिलेटेड आपने देखा होगा, जो मिसेलेनियस है ना, उसमें आपने देखा होगा कि कुछ स्पेसिफिक रिक्वायरमेंट उसमें दिया है मिथिल रिक्वायरमेंट, क्योंकि वो ज्यादा ही हजार्डस है। अगर उसका हैंडलिंग में और इसमें बहुत ज्यादा हजार्डस है, इसकी वजह से उसका रिप्लेसमेंट के लिए डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है। तो ये जो अभी आ रहा है, अभी क्लियरली नोटिफिकेशन में एक्सेस लिखा नहीं है, इथाइल मर्कैप्टन का ही नाम दिया हुआ है, इसके अलावा और किसी का नाम नहीं दिया है। लेकिन इन केस अगर ये न्यू डेवलपमेंट में उससे लेस हजार्डस होगा तो वो आ जाएगा, लेकिन एज ऑन डेट जो नोटिफिकेशन में एज सच कोई चेकलिस्ट में भी हो या नोटिफिकेशन में कोई ऐसा अमेंडमेंट नहीं आया है कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम द इथाइल मर्कैप्टन यू कैन आल्सो दैट यूज दैट, ऐसा कुछ आया नहीं है।
हाँ नहीं, ऑलरेडी मेरा इसके बारे में थोड़ा सेफ्टी वाले से भी डिस्कशन हुआ था, तो बोला था कि कुछ टेम्परेचर का ये मतलब अभी मेरे ध्यान में नहीं एग्जैक्ट, उसने बताया था स्पॉट लीक का टेम्परेचर और मतलब जो ये होता है और इथाइल मर्कैप्टन का टेम्परेचर, इसके कुछ रिलेशन के वजह से वो स्पॉट लीक यूज करते हैं, ऐसा कुछ बोला था उन्होंने।
अच्छा, नहीं लेकिन ऐसा कुछ अमेंडमेंट तो आया नहीं है, मे बी ये डेवलपमेंट है, डेवलपमेंट स्टेज में है, लेकिन एक्चुअल इसमें नोटिफिकेशन में कवर नहीं किया है। जो अभी लेटेस्ट जो अमेंडमेंट्स हुए उसमें ये नहीं कवर हुआ है।
ठीक है, ओके सर।
Okay, thank you for patient listening, and now I will hand over to Yukta for the concluding.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative talk. We now move ahead. Our next session is on 30th July on topic General Understanding of Medical Devices Regulation by Ms. Sonika Rani, which will be followed by question and answer session. ICS is pleased to provide you all its research and development, integrated management system, QMS, EMS, and OSHAs, excellence in education management, ISO made easy in Gujarati, in Marathi, in Telugu, and in Hindi. For reading any of the above books, please contact Ms. Sushma Kindalkar. Please register on www.sadgunsang.org and go in your login to give feedback. On behalf of Sadgunsang team, I would like to express my gratitude to all its esteemed delegates for the webinar, for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. We now officially close the session. Thank you.